And it's this is that time of season, right? Like this is the time of year where we start hearing so much chatter and so much speculation. And this guy doesn't like this. This guy looked bad here. At what point do we just start scratching our head and go, is it here yet? Is draft day here yet? Like, are you already there, James?
Man, I wish I was because, as you said, I get kind of sick of the rumors, the narratives. This guy's going to be great. This guy's a bust. This guy will be great at 6, but he'd be horrible at 2. And it's like, we're all going to look back in 10 years, like with every draft, and say, oh, that person that everyone thought wasn't all that great, he's the best player in his draft class, and he should have went number 1. Like, I think one of the funniest things we do in the media, as far as sports media, is like we look back and do these redrafts, and it's like, well, Giannis should have been number 1, but like if everyone knew Giannis was going to be Giannis back then, of course he would have went number 1. But
Right.
that's the game, that's the draft. No one really knows until 5 years down the line, and you know.
Right. Look, you get to build up your idea of what your ideal player is, right? That's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite type of player mold? And that's why you'll see people make so many different types of player types in
Yeah.
NBA 2K. Like, there's so many different types of players out there. And I think in this draft, it really speaks to that volume of there's such a variety of talent in multiple different ways. And it blows my mind still to this day that the top 3 players in this draft are forward centers. Like, I don't know when the last time that's
Yeah.
happened where it's like these forward centers are the top 3 in the draft. And not only that, James, these forward centers, they can handle the basketball, they can shoot 3-pointers, and
Yeah.
2 of them are just known for their defense. Like, that's incredible to me.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and it makes it very interesting to see like who could go number 1. Because I will say this is the first time in a while where we don't have like that consensus number 1, or really those consensus, like surefire stars. For example, the year that John Moran and Zion Williamson came out, everyone knew these two are stars. Like these two are gonna be dynamic. They're gonna be franchise altering players. I don't think that players in this draft don't have that potential. It's just not as clear, which makes it a little more exciting for, again, the franchises like the ones we cover, where they're in that 4 to 6 range. They're in the top 10, but again, that there's no clear guy that okay, that's who they're going to get. So that's why I think the Pacers are going to be open to, as the team president said, Kevin Pritchard, optionality. Possibly moving up, possibly moving back, possibly trading away some current guys to get younger assets. He said all options are on the table, and I believe him just because, again, they don't have that top 3 pick that ensures that they're going to get the guy that they want.
So let's talk about that. Let's go ahead and dive right on in because, like you said, at the top of the draft, I think it's, like you said, pretty much unknown. I think it's unknown how the top 3 is going to be played out. I
Yeah.
think the draft starts as soon as we see who goes number 1. Is it going to be Chet? Is it going to be Jabari? I think Vegas thinks it still will be Jabari. I mean, he's a minus 280 favorite right now to land that number 1 spot. I think that the money, if you are a better in this draft, is on Chet to go number 1. I still believe that they're going to try and build culture with the history that he has with Jalen Suggs, though people think that I'm overhyping that a little bit just because does Suggs really get his best friend as the number 1 pick? I guess I understand that there. Number 2, I think is where the draft really begins. You're going to find it very interesting in, man, is OKC really this infatuated with another guard? Is it Jaden Ivey? Is there a deal there with the Kings? And I talked about that heavily on the last show with Rylan Stiles. So, or are they going to take Chet? There's Paolo. And then obviously we're going to figure out where those 2 go. And then the draft really begins there at number 4 with the Sacramento Kings and what they decide to do. It still seems that Keegan Murray is the front runner in terms of best fit, in terms of fitting their needs. But there's so much chatter now that Jaden Ivey is the guy at 4, James, and there's so much potential of the Kings taking their pick and moving it down into the draft, possibly with the Indiana Pacers. And that's why I wanted to have you on this show. Are you hearing the same thing? What are you hearing about a potential deal between the Indiana Pacers and the Sacramento Kings?
Yeah, I would say that the Pacers have kept things close to the vest. I would say, as you know, there's been no like really substantial breaking news on what the Pacers are thinking with their pick from me or Woj or Shams. It hasn't been like that. Like I said, I do think that they're weighing their options, and I think just from this is my own personal thing. Again, it's not the Pacers saying this. I just think for me personally, I think that they have to look at potentially moving up and using Malcolm Brogdon to do it. Um, to me, he's that one player who doesn't fit the timeline of this team. You got Halliburton, who's 22. You got Chris Duarte, who's 25. You got Isaiah Jackson, who doesn't turn 21 until next year. Even Myles Turner is 26. And then you have Malcolm Brogdon, who's 29 and injury prone. So it's like, if you have your point guard of the future, and you're in this again 4 to 6 range where you can get a really good secondary two guard or wing player, where does that leave Malcolm Brogdon? Do you draft a guy if it's Murray, if it's Ivy, maybe not so Murray because he's like a 3-4, but if it's Ivy, if it's Matherin, if it's one of those guys where they're a true two guard, do you want to draft them and put them behind, a Malcolm Brogdon or take him off the bench behind Malcolm Brogdon and Chris Duarte? I don't think it's worth it. I think if you have that top 5 pick or top 6 pick, you should be willing to draft that guy, play him right away. Again, you probably won't be that good, but at least you're building with that young group and you moved on, like I said, from an older injury-prone Malcolm Brogdon, who, quite frankly, might like another situation because it fits his timeline better. So that's my only thinking behind it, and why I think that a potential deal between the Pacers and the Kings isn't off the table. Again, I haven't heard anything specifically. I won't lie to you guys, but I think just anybody with common sense can kind of see where I'm going with this. Like, if you have a young core, why keep the one guy who's going to be 30 in December around for the future? I think if you really want to build it from the ground up, go all in with this rebuild, you have to do it now because, frankly, if you keep him or not, you're not going to be that good anyway next year. So I think you should get younger. Again, not have a really great year again, be right back in the lottery with a chance to, again, get another young asset and continue that build.
So you're saying go OKC route?
Yeah, I really do. I don't think that Pacers fans want to hear that. I don't think that they're used to that. But I think after, this is their first single digit pick in 30 plus years. Even Reggie Miller was the 11th pick. Paul George was the 10th pick. So they never had a top 10 pick. I mean, I won't say never, but they haven't had one in so long. So I think since you've kind of bottomed out for the first time in over 30 plus years, you need to really take your time and do it right instead of trying to make a quick fix and just be like a 10th seed, 9th seed play-in team or a potential, bottom tier playoff team. If you really want to build it up and build a contender, I believe you have to go that long route, especially considering that you're Indiana. You're not going to get a big free agent signing, so might as well try to, again, build it up through the draft, get good young assets. And for everyone freaking out, you can still get a really good player at number 6,
Mm-hmm.
or like I said, move up to number 4, or again, keep number 6, move Malcolm Brogdon and potentially get another top 10 or lottery pick. So there's options out there. I just think that the chances of Malcolm Brogdon being with this team, with this young group, is getting slimmer just because of, again, the timeline of the team.
Yeah, I think there's a growing speculation that it is a Malcolm Brogdon type of deal that would move him to Sacramento and he would be that guy next to Fox as their starting backcourt duo. The only thing that I have questions with that in terms of a lineup is they continue to preach that defense was their main focal point and change. And Malcolm Brogdon, while he is a good defender, I see him more as a point guard defender. And it's the same thing with De'Aaron Fox. Like, De'Aaron Fox is, I mean, I'm not going to lie, De'Aaron Fox isn't that great defensively. So, you need to have a guy that plays locked on defense, especially with a lot of these two guards. I'm already, off the top of my head, I'm already thinking of Devin Booker out west. And I don't know if Brogdon is one that I can see really being able to even stay in front of him with the size that Booker has, as well as his lateral quickness. So that questions me. A name that has started to recently pop up on this side, right, in Sacramento, is Myles Turner again. And I think after Domantas Sabonis was traded to the Kings, I had you on the show. We made our debut, and I asked you, Was that pairing good? And you told me it wasn't very strong. The two of them, they didn't really mesh very well. They were good friends off the court, but on the court, it just seemed like one needed the ball more. Turner obviously wanted to have more of a prominent role on the offense. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think he fully buys into the idea of coming to Sacramento and being like I'm going to just fit right in where I was before type of
Mm-hmm.
mindset. But does a Turner and the six pick intrigue you more and still being able to hold maybe Brogdon for a trade down the road? Maybe he goes back to a team like, I don't know, Milwaukee, where he was from. Maybe there's something there to acquire like a Pat Connaughton for you guys, a younger character. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Turner in the six and being that the package?
So I will say this just real quick. I think that Malcolm Brogdon is an underrated defender. They did put him on a lot of bigger guards throughout the season. It's just that the sample size, at least from what I saw, was so small because he only played 36 games. But when he was healthy, he was checking, LeBron. He was taking the Westbrooks of the world. He was taking a lot of these bigger wings and doing a pretty decent job. When they got a couple of their, you know, I would say marquee wins, if you can say that for a team that didn't do very well throughout the season, is because he had pretty good perimeter defense. So I would say he's a pretty good perimeter defender. It just depends on, can you rely on him being out on the court. And then to your other point with Myles Turner, for the chaos alone, if he got traded to the Kings, that would burn our Twitter feeds to the ground. Like that would be hilarious from that standpoint. But the reason why I don't think it's likely to happen is because he didn't play with Tyrese Halliburton last year after they acquired him. And I think, there was a report from Mark Stein saying, quote, he might seek to play out the final year of his contract and maybe not sign a contract extension because he's eligible for one now. And obviously he's going into the last year of his contract. So I think that they have to at least roll the dice on playing him with Tyrese Halliburton and seeing how it fits. I think even
Hmm.
for him, he has to, for example, prove that he's the guy. Like he's talked the talk even after being hurt. And his exit interview at the end of the season, he was saying, "I'm going to remind folks, what I do, who I am." He's ready for a bigger role. He basically came out and said he wanted it. Now you have it. And I think that from the Pacers' perspective, they need to at least see how he looks, see how he fits next to whoever they get at number 6 or whatever other moves they might make alongside Halliburton, alongside Chris Duarte, and can he handle a bigger role? And if it comes down to the fit isn't great or Myles is hesitant to sign that extension, then I think you have to move on from him and again get some young assets for potentially next year's draft. So I don't see Myles Turner getting moved like within the next week on draft night for a pick unless they know for certain he's just not going to re-sign. But I think that they at least have to see it, and kind of, at least for me, I'm curious to see what it looks like. It would be so weird to me for them to pick basically Myles Turner over Sabonis. Now, granted, you don't get Halliburton without trading Sabonis, but you chose you chose Turner. You got to see what he looks like next to your future point guard.
I don't know if they chose. I mean, I would. I mean, you would know better than I would in terms of Pacers, but from the outside looking in, when comes to Indiana, I don't know if they would necessarily chose Turner over Sabonis. I think it was clear. Again, outsiders looking in. I'm not close to the team like that. I'd both
I
say,
guess let me clarify and say when I say chose over, they chose the player that would get them the most assets in a trade to
yeah,
trade.
yeah,
I've been on record saying Domantas Sabonis was their best player. So by over, I mean, hey, they said, okay, we think that if we trade this guy for Tyrese Halliburton, he could be a better fit alongside that. We can get more in return for him. That's
yeah,
what I mean. I don't think that by any stretch of my imagination that Sabonis is or Turner is a better player than Sabonis. I do not think that's true at all.
yeah,
That's been true for any point of their careers. However, at some point you had to make a choice between the two, and you chose Turner and you chose move on with Sabonis, and you got a really good player in return. Again,
yeah.
everyone acts like the Kings got swindled or
Fleeced.
something like
Yeah,
that. It's like, no, they got a two-time All-Star. They got the Pacers' best player. And because of that, I think you have to at least see how the guy that you still have stacks up next to Halliburton. And again, the Kings have a lot to figure out on their side, but I think that they should be, I would be pleased with how that turned out in the sense that you still have Fox, you still have Sabonis, and we could talk about a little bit more. You have a chance to get a guy like Ivy. I know the reports are out there that he doesn't want to go there, and
Yeah,
they could
we'll
very
get to
well be
that
true,
for sure.
not true, but man, like it's hard to have, in my opinion, it's hard for a player to have leverage coming into a draft when you're not Zion and you're not LeBron and you're not Kevin Durant. Like, dude, you still got to prove yourself too.
Yeah, I think people forget too, like with Turner, he is in the final year of his contract, but he's coming into his 8th season and he's only 26 years old.
Yeah.
Like that is incredible. Like he's still like people will think that he doesn't fit their timeline, but he's right there in the middle of it. He would be a veteran at 26 years old, getting a pretty substantial extension. I think he has proven that at least in terms of what he brings to a basketball floor is a positive. He's a big man that runs the floor. He runs it fast, so he fits a fast-paced offense. Not only does he do that, he's a great help side defender because he gets all those block shots, as well as a positional defender. He guards his position fairly well. Obviously, size is still his biggest issue, but he makes it up with his length and his ability to stand straight up. So I applaud Myles Turner in that way. And then offensively, a lot of people know him as the pick and popper. I mean, that we haven't got to see too much more than just that. So obviously, the evolution of his game is going to be able to see, are you really that guy that's going to be taking it off the dribble? Are you that guy that puts your back against the basket? You say you are him. You say there's so much more in that bag. Maybe you are right. Maybe playing with a Tyrese Halliburton opens that bag for him. I will say this though, we got to see Halliburton and a pairing with him and Rashawn Holmes, and it's still a lot of pick and pop. Rashawn Holmes doesn't have too much in his bag, but when that pairing was together, James, when that pairing was working, it was one of the best 1-2 punches in Sacramento in terms of a 1 and a 5. So if he's willing to buy into that, I mean, there's something special growing over there.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing for me. It's like you look at Myles Turner, can he be like your best player on a playoff team? I don't think so, but I think he could be that number 3 type of guy on a really, really good team. Now that he probably doesn't want to hear that, I think he thinks that he's better than that. And again, if I'm the Pacers, I will give you a few months to prove that. And if you can't, and if you don't want to re-sign, if you don't want to accept whatever role the team is kind of formed around you by that point, you have to look elsewhere. And that's when I think you can really, see that Myles Turner trade talk heat up. I know the joke here is that he's always in trade talks every year, but obviously this year is a lot different because it's the last year. So
these are the realest trade talks you're going to get.
They're not going to let him walk for nothing. He could very well be worth a first-round pick down the line or whatever, but I think that right now you have to see how it fits. And if any, trade is going to happen between the Kings and the Pacers, it will be, again, around that 6th pick moving up to number 4 and something involving Malcolm Brogdon or someone else other than Myles Turner.
Let's talk about one more Myles Turner deal, and then we'll take a pause for a commercial break as James Boyd of the Indy Star joins us back here on the Kings Court podcast presented to you by RateCrushers.com. Before we hit the 15-second commercial, James, I got to ask you this. If you get offered by the Toronto Raptors OG Anunoby for Myles Turner, are you doing that deal?
I'm going to say no.
Wow, that blows my mind. That actually blows my mind. I feel like that makes the most sense. You guys got a fleece of a deal. If there was any fleece of a deal that you got, if you ever got the better end of any deal, is when you got Jaden Smith from the Phoenix Suns for absolutely nothing. He is a top-notch center that I think you guys can play off right away. And then if you can get OG Anunoby to fix that timeline.
This is the thing. Jalen Smith has a unique contract situation where the Pacers will most likely not be able to re-sign him. So, and they're like limited in the amount of money that I can't really explain it because there's a lot to explain. Yeah. But long story short, they can't offer him what he's worth. So he'll most likely leave for more money and more security with another franchise. So with him gone, what's one forward that you'd be down to Isaiah Jackson as like your starting center. And I like the guy, but like your defense will be decimated. You'd be back in the lottery. I think that you have to at least, again, see the fit with Myles Turner and Tyrese Halliburton for a few months before you say trade him for, OG.
Wow. Wow. That's clip. That's a clip. That's a clip. We're taking that. We're taking that. James Boyd of the Indy Star joining us here. We're going to come back at the end of this commercial break. We're talking Kings basketball, guys. We're going to be talking about Is Jaden Ivey's comments real, or is it more just fluff? So more with James Boyd at the end of this commercial break. All right, James, we're back. And again, this show, the King's Court podcast, is presented to you by RateCrushers.com. Like I said in the commercial, guys, whether it's car insurance, mortgage insurance, renter's insurance, leisure insurance, anything you guys need, make sure you're not overpaying for your coverage. Go to RateCrushers.com and let them know that the King's Court podcast sent you. So we talked Pacers all in that first half there, James, but I think there's still a lot of news on this side of Sacramento, talking about the Sacramento Kings, as we inch closer and closer, 1 week until we are at the NBA draft, now comes the speculation. And recently, Jonathan Givoni of Draft Express, ESPN, came out with a report that said Jaden Ivey's camp does not have Sacramento as a quote-unquote preferred destination at number 4. What were your thoughts when you heard this?
My thoughts were honestly like, hey, do you, as a Pacers front office, ring that line and say, hey, this guy might not be there for you guys, but we're willing to take him. But the other thing that came to mind with this was, what does that even mean? Like, I feel like if you were to draft him, what would he do? If the Kings were to draft him, what would he say? I'm not coming. I don't want to go. So, like, how much weight do you put into that? I know the Kings have been super secretive about who they brought in. They really haven't announced any of it. And just real quick tangent, like I asked Dyson Daniels, last week, I believe, who he's working out for, and he mentioned the Kings, and I just, tweeted it out.
Today or tomorrow.
Yeah,
today
and
or tomorrow.
My Twitter kind of blew up because everyone's like, oh, my God, that's the highest reported guy that's coming in that we know about. Blah, blah. I had no idea they were keeping everything so hush-hush. And all that to be said, I think that they're going to make their evaluations. They're going to look at all these top guys in that range. And I really think that they have a chance, and they should feel confident about taking Jaden Ivey, because how much leverage do you really have as a rookie to say, it's not my preferred location? Well, that's the thing. Yeah, nothing's preferred. You have to kind of show what I would. The Kings probably prefer to get a star in this draft class, and if they think you're the guy, then go there and prove it. Is kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, when I hear these comments, first off, it's draft season. You're gonna hear the craziest things. You're gonna hear any mock draft you go to. Just know one agent had an involved situation and how that mock looked. It's just that type of season, guys. It's like if I had to pull the curtain back, if I had to make a big reveal, it would be like letting you guys know Santa Claus isn't real. Like it's like that. Like these mock drafts aren't real. Like it's just a bunch of speculation, a bunch of agents pressing their names. A lot of them just trying to set their player up best for success. A lot of agents don't see their player ever being successful in Sacramento. That's just a thing. I mean, the Kings' track records prove that, right? So I don't really buy into a big hype of that. But at the same time, to Jaden Ivey's camp, and we talked about this prior to coming onto this show, right before, there was no talk of Ivy in the top 4 for a large period of time. Like, there was the lottery, Kings landed the 4th pick. That 4th pick for at least 2 to 3 weeks was Keegan Murray or Shaedon Sharpe. Then started coming the chatter of Jaden Ivey.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, if you look at my Twitter feed, I was big on Jaden Ivey prior. I even said more and more so that there was even a Twitter tweet that I had that says it'll become more prominent the closer we get to the draft that Jaden Ivey is the guy. And look, that came to fruition. That is true. But let's not pretend that you were a top 4 pick this entire time and now you're like, well, now OKC's looking at me at number 2. I don't think Sacramento is my preferred destination. Again, it just doesn't seem like that's the mindset that's happening. I think, again, it's just chatter. It's just rumor. It's to build up a bunch of smoke. But sometimes when there's smoke, there's fire. There could be a ton of outside pressure, though, I believe, on the Kings to make this move, as the Kings have the internal pressure of really diving into this change that we are going to be pushing for the playoffs, pushing for the at least play in to have that potential for the playoffs. I think this front office as well as the team owner is tired of hearing about this drought. And on my side of it, it's I don't believe that they should really worry about this drought. You invested into the drought, so it's not like it's not you're not obligated to make drastic changes based on the history of this team. It's about building for the future of this team, and that's where I feel like there's a bit of a lost art into what the Kings are doing. But who knows? At this point now, you're fully dived in. You traded it for another 26-year-old in Domantas Sabonis. You have a 26-year-old star in De'Aaron Fox, and now you're looking for that next guy. Is Harrison Barnes still going to be around? You have a lot of expiring contracts. What does that bring back for you, as well as this number 4 pick? I think the Kings don't know how good of a spot that they're actually sitting in to where maybe trickle down trading, where it means you're trading down for pick to acquire assets like a Malcolm Brogdon at 6. Maybe then you trade 6 for Kyle Kuzma in the 10, and now you're trading at the 10th, and now you're drafting at the 10th spot. Trickle down trading could be the thing that they do here. I don't know, but I just feel like there's a lot of smoke here, and I don't know if fans are should be really reading into this too much. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I think Ivy's one of the most polarizing players in the draft. You know, you got people who love him, people who don't think he's going to be all that, and that's for every player. There's always going to be, people on both sides of the fence. But again, I think that there's always going to be reports of this guy doesn't want to go to X franchise because they haven't been that great in years past or whatever. But, you know, if you're really that guy and they draft you, your mindset, and I'm sure it will be for whoever they pick, and even if it's Ivy, your mindset should be, if you're a competitor, hey, like, I'm going to show them that they got the right guy, that we're going to get this thing right on the track. And one of the things with the Kings, at least with their makeup and how they kind of view things, since they want to win now, you're going to be put in situations where you're going to be expected to produce. And if you feel like you're that player and you can be, a dynamic guy right off the bat, go show them. You'll get plenty of opportunity to do that and potentially do it for a team that, again, vying for a play-in, playoff spot. I would say, again, from my perspective, the Pacers aren't really in that lane. I know people are going to want them to really push for play-in, playoffs. I don't see it happening after bottoming out like they did with just one pick kind of doing that. But again, the Kings have kind of been aggressive the last few years, especially last year, in getting Sabonis, who's a win-now player. They have a De'Aaron Fox, who's a win-now player. And I think that you kind of have to, if you're the Kings, look at it like, we're going to get our guy, we're going to get into the playoffs or the play-in and compete. So, again, there's always going to be speculation, a lot of dialogue. This guy doesn't like this guy does like this. And again,
it's all going to be answered in a week. All those questions, all those rumors are answered in a week.
And that's the thing that always is sort of annoying, people asking me what's going to happen, who's the guy, who's this, who's that. Of course, I would love to be hearing exactly what the Pacers are thinking, exactly what the Kings are thinking. But the bottom line is we don't know until we know, like everyone else. So they announce it, and then you can go from there. But I do think that, again, the Kings are in a really great position to, again, choose who they want and go from there. Like, to me personally, I'm not, again, in the front office, but if I read this report, if I'm hearing things, I don't know how much that would deter me from drafting a guy who I think could help my team. That's
wouldn't
just the
deter
bottom
me
line.
at all. Honestly, it wouldn't deter me at all. I would read that. If I'm Monty McNair and I see that article, I go, thanks, Jonathan, and just move on. That would be it. I would laugh and move on.
We're not gonna get the best guy for our team because of a rumor or because of whatever is being pushed from whatever source. I don't.
Not even that. Answer me this, James. You're an outside prospect. You're Jaden Ivey. You're Monty McNair. You read that article. You call Jaden Ivey right now and say, hey, we're thinking about taking you at number 4. You're not thinking he's starting to get a little bit excited? You're going to be the number 4 pick in the there's payment levels to this. If you're a top 4 pick, there's levels to that payment. I'm just saying the bag is there at 4. The
Very
money
true.
talks.
Very true. Very true. And that's the part also is like, I think, and even one of the questions I've been asking, and any of you can all check out, the interviews I've done with all the prospects that come in. Some of them I haven't even written stories about, but I'll talk to them and just upload the video for whoever needs it. And, one of the questions I love to ask him is like, what would 10-year-old you say about the moment you're in right now? And of course, 10-year-old Jaden Ivey just wants to get drafted. 10-year-old Keegan Murray, 10-year-old, Paolo, all these guys have dreamed of this moment. So to say like, oh, this isn't a preferred spot, or to think that if he were to be drafted by the Kings or by any franchise that, oh my God, they will be so miserable, unhappy. Come on, man. Like, there's still a guy who wanted to get paid to play basketball, wanted to be a star, wanted to live out the dream that I'm sure me, you, and others have had. And when you get that opportunity, you take it and run with it. So I'm not too worried about any of that narrative. I think, again, what's most interesting, as we've discussed, is figuring out who goes where, because we could be 2 picks in and be totally like, oh my God, I didn't think that was going to happen. You know what I mean? Or we have an inkling of it, but it's like, oh, they actually did that. They actually took Ivy at 2. Then what? You know
then
what? I mean? So exactly, it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
Another big issue that I think the Kings are having a problem with, and you hit on it in that first half of the show, which is they're not really talking to anyone about who they're bringing in. They had Jeremy Sokan, however you pronounce the last name, in for a workout. And we actually only got to see that because the day of Game 6 of the finals, the Sacramento Kings YouTube channel released that they had a workout, and they did a 3-on-3 workout with Sokan. That was it. That's how we found out. That's how we found out he was in Sacramento doing a workout. And now, tomorrow, we all get to have a Zoom interview call with Jabari, Banchero, Ivy. We get to Zoom interview with them, so we are going to be able to talk to these young guys and at least figure out their real headspace. And I'm sure one of us will probably dive into Ivy a little bit about, is what's your thoughts on Sacramento will probably be the question.
And that's the thing. So it's funny because I believe actually Ivy talks to like the national media for the pre-draft thing on Monday, but they do have all this stuff lined up. And one of the things that's like the narrative that was asked today to Keegan Murray. When I was on the call, I had like my one Pacers question, but 10 of the questions, well, not 10, I'll say about 5 of them were about the Kings. Do you want to come here? What do you think of the franchise? And then to me, I get it. Like, you're going to say the correct things. You're not going to like diss a franchise. But it helps to at least ask the guy himself.
Instead
what do
of
you think?
Third party, 30 years.
Yeah, these back channels, this and that. And again, to me, you're on the brink of your dream, and if any franchise is willing to give you your dream or help you get to your dream, then I think at the end of the day, what can you feel besides joy? I mean, you're going to the NBA. You're going to be a millionaire. Your family's going to be set for life.
Yeah, I feel like everyone needs to know that we're at that point. Again, a lot of smoke. They're building campfires with cardboard. Like, it's literally a ton of black smoke in the air. Don't believe everything you see. Don't believe everything you read. Just know your answers and questions will all be answered in about 1 week when the NBA draft is actually here. 1 more week, 7 more days. June 23rd, we will be seeing the NBA draft and who will be actually selecting with that 4th pick. Is it the Kings? Is it Jaden Ivey? Is it the Pacers? Are they moving up? So many questions will need to be answered by that time. But James, I feel like we had such a great conversation just talking about smoke, the Pacers, the Kings. Before I let you go and before we start rattling off where people can find you, let me ask you another Pacers question. Who are they taking with the number 6 pick?
Ooh, put me on the spot. I think based off of just how I'm feeling, again, it's not no intel. I would say Mathurin at 6.
Yeah, Mathurin.
Probably one of the more safer picks.
Really?
And also, he still has a ton of upside because he can shoot the 3. He's super athletic. And I just like it. I like his demeanor. He's a dog, man. So
yeah.
We'll see.
I like Benedict Mathurin. I was a real high, and I said this just a couple shows ago actually. I was really high on Mathurin to start my draft deep dive. There's been a lot of numbers that you can look into in his half-court sets, especially with how the Pacers are probably going to be running their offense with Halliburton. I don't like his numbers, how they drop off with his shooting. His shooting numbers drop tremendously in half-court sets. He's a player that definitely needs to be moving fast, but if he can figure out that shooting in half-court sets, it definitely goes up. I would say look into the player profile that Rafael Barlow did on his NBA draft big board.
Yeah, I need to actually reach out to him. I'm trying to get in contact with him.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He was just on the show a week ago.
Yeah, I know. And I screenshot it and I was like, man, I got to talk to this dude.
Yeah.
Just for get some other thoughts in there, because I'm not a draft analyst. I haven't sat down and watched hours of film on all these guys. But yeah, I think Mathurin, but I also think Keegan Murray wouldn't be a bad fit just because they had 3 or 4. They need a guy who's longer, who can shoot the ball.
Shaden Sharp is my pick for you guys at 6.
Man, I just don't know because he's such a mixture.
I love that answer. I just don't know.
But honestly, for the chaos alone and for just the sheer history of it, I'm cool with it.
I feel like Shaden Sharp can be your Danny Granger, can be your Paul George. As my dog is starting to get excited at the idea, you can hear him barking back there. I'm telling you, Shaden Sharp. There's a grow. I feel like there's gonna, when that 6 picks is up, if the Pacers did not trade it, there's gonna be a lot of excitement there. My dogs are really playing with each other now. They're really excited about this idea of Shaden Sharp at 6.
Tomorrow, and I'm going to ask him. He might not answer, but I'm going to ask him. What teams or do you still have to talk to? Have you talked to certain teams? Obviously, the Pacers, the Kings. Have you been around these teams? Because they might not tell us, but it's at least worth asking.
Yep. James Boyd of the Indy Star made his return to the Kings Court podcast. James, thank you so much. I highly appreciate you coming back on the show, man. This is always a great conversation when you come on the show. Where can the fans find you online? Where can they read all your work and check you out during the off season and obviously for the seasons to come?
Romeoville Kid on Twitter, Instagram. You can obviously read my work at indystar.com. I've been going to every single pre-draft workout. I've been trying to do my best to keep up with everything that's going on, and obviously it's gonna get just a little more crazy, over this next week, and then after that, we'll finally have our answers.
Yeah, man, I'm so excited to see where these teams go. I told you that the Pacers are my like secret what was it called? What is it called when you have a bad movie that you can't stop watching?
Oh,
whatever. What is it? A guilty pleasure. They're my guilty pleasure team in the NBA. There's something about the Pacers. It could be that the fact that you guys got Tyrese Halliburton in the deal. I just can't take my eyes off you. It's just one of those teams. It's you can't stop watching. So I'm excited to see that.
On the spot right now. Who wins Game 6 tonight?
I'm calling it right now. Throw the banners up. Throw another banner in the sky. Boston ain't never felt this pressure like this. Boston ain't never felt the pressure like this. Steph Curry's going to become Chef Curry. Klay Thompson's going to hit that 3. Guess what, James? I'm putting this out there right now. NBABestBets.substack.com. Subscribe at VM Center. Take plus 3.5. The Golden State Warriors are becoming champions, and I'm not even a Warriors fan. I'm a moneymaker fan. Let's go make that money today, James. Plus 3.5. Plus 3.5. James Boyd of the Indy Star. You guys go follow him. He is the Romeoville Kid on Twitter. My name is Vince Miracle. You guys can follow me on all social media platforms of at VM Center. The Kings Court podcast is presented to you by RateCrushers.com, as you guys can see it right there. Shout out to everyone that joined us here live on YouTube.com/SacKingsNation. Shout out to you if you're listening to it on iTunes. But what the heck are you guys doing if you haven't done this already? Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button so we can get the algorithm turning. And until next time, Sacramento Kings fans, peace. All right, brother, we're clear.